Good day, everyone. Today we'll have a new topic, which is on the interaction of science and technology. So, this is our objective. You should be able to discuss the interactions between science and technology throughout history and delineate the effects of scientific and technological advancements to society and the environment. Okay, so we begin with definitions about science. Okay, so there are different definitions based on different authors, and these definitions are as follow. So, to Zewell, science is an education process that allows the educated and creative minds to question, experiment, or observe in an attempt to find answers, and then try to identify a set of unifying principles, concepts, and laws that embraces all phenomena of nature. To Sipney, it's a process of comprehension and description of the universe by utilizing and organizing the truth and knowledge with scientific methods. And it's a body of knowledge, a way of knowledge, and a set of methods or processes according to Bell. So Bell puts this definition in the diagram. If it's a body of knowledge, well, science then is composed of facts, definitions, concepts, theories, laws, and among others. If it's a way of knowledge, we define science in the following context. So scientific knowledge is based upon evidences. So there is no scientific knowledge which is based on hearsays. So knowledge are created through empirical studies. Okay, next, scientific knowledge can change over time. This is very true. What we know today may no longer be the same tomorrow. Knowledge is evolving. And creativity plays an important role in science. Creativity does not only apply in arts, in humanities, but also science. Science is an art. Okay, so it takes creative minds to discover information, to describe knowledge, and among others. Okay, then, background knowledge influences how scientists view data. So, this explains why we have different school of thoughts. We have some positivist, we have postmodernist, we have realist, and among other school of thoughts. So, these school of thoughts that each individual has influences how they view data. For example, in the case of these scientists, most of these are positivists. So, meaning to say, if they're positivist, they believe in objective reality, and objective reality can only be achieved through scientific experimentation. But for other school of thoughts, for example, in my case, although I am teaching science, but I really consider myself as a postmodernist. So it's a school of thought as well, which is different from postmodernist. But I'm applying that one in some of my research studies. Okay, but anyway, if science is described as a set of methods or processes, then this involves the following uh, methods or processes, such as observation, measurement, estimation, inferring, predicting, classifying, hypothesizing, experimenting, concluding, and among others. Okay, so further, science, according to Aslam, can only be called science if it satisfies the following characteristics. It should be phenomenological, logical, objective, critical, generic, selective, progressive, and based on fundamental needs. So it's a body of knowledge. It's a body of evaluated knowledge that involves definitions, concepts, and phenomena which are systematically organized using several methods. Take note, it's a body of evaluated knowledge. So it is not just a body of knowledge because when we say it's a body of knowledge, well, everybody can contribute to the body of knowledge. Um, it may be uh, a correct information or is a false information. So these knowledge has to be evaluated. So that explains why, if you have your thesis or your dissertation, or even your research in senior high school and junior high school, you have to undergo thesis defense, because the knowledge or the thesis or the idea that you are creating and you want to contribute to the body of knowledge needs to be evaluated by pool of experts. Okay, so now we proceed with technology. So by the way, we should first define these terms. That way we can relate their interactions. Okay, so Norton defines technology by developing three different points of view. First, technology as a practical activity. Second, as technology involves applying not just scientific knowledge, but also other types of knowledge. And third, technology involves people and organization as well as machines. To Selfie in 1999, technology is described as computers and communication technologies. Well, I think for most of us, when we hear the word technology, we associate this term with these computing machines and communication technologies, gadgets in particular, and among others. That's how we perceive technology. Okay, but again, technology is more than that. So also because it is a technology beyond just teaching and communication technologies. We also have other forms of technologies, again, aside from computers. We have multimedia, we have biotechnology, and among others. Okay, so these advances in genetic engineering, it's considered as technology. Okay, so to Dagger, technology is the sum of alterations made to the natural environment for people's own purposes, to live longer and more productively, to meet demands and needs. Okay, so basically, that's the fundamental purpose of technology, to give us to give us for easier and to give us comfortable life, to meet our demands or our needs. Okay, so but the problem here is sometimes technology is often abused. Okay, so we create weapons. So weapons supposedly that's for peace, to stabilize peace or to promote peace and order. But sometimes these forms of technology are being abused. So they are used for warfares. So the purpose of technology then is defeated. So it's an application of knowledge that consists of the production methods related to a branch of industry, the equipment, instruments, and tools that are used and their usage formats. So this is what I'm saying to you a while ago, that there is an interaction of science and technology, because application of knowledge refers to science. Okay, so I mean to knowledge refers to science, and when we apply this one, we create something out of it, so it becomes a technology. Okay, so also it's the sum of materials which have been developed to meet people's needs and improve their welfare. Okay, so now we look into the relationship of science, technology, and society. So scientists assert that science and technology are dependent on each other. So there is dynamic information flow between them. Okay, so why did Chavez and Morrow say that in 2007? Okay, so for example, whatever advances or whatever knowledge you have, you apply that one. You take advantage of that particular knowledge to develop a certain technology. Likewise, technology, um, the advances in technology also gives us further knowledge. So, in other words, science contributes to technology, and likewise, advances in technology contributes in the frontiers or advances in science. So they are important for the society and they should develop. Zewell explains that the aim of science is to better understand the universe and gain new knowledge that will enlighten humanity by unveiling mysteries of how nature works, by making new discoveries and inventions that change the way we think and or create new technologies that transform our society. So this is one reason why um, I don't really see gap between science and religion. It is because the role of science is basically to understand, to study the works of God, and eventually science disseminates this information. because often science has been criticized because it turns to be antichrist at some point. But then again, if we are going to expand our thinking, uh, there is really a good connection between science and religion, because again, science studies the work of God, and so science also teaches what are the works of God. What are the works of God? In other words, science discovers the truth. Okay, so Baibe explained that the relationship of science and technology, where science assists society to develop a better understanding for fundamental concepts and processes of technology, and adds that there is an integral connection between science and technology, where most advances in science are based on technology. So Gardner presented the relationship between science, technology, and society under four headings. So science precedes technology. So that is, human technological capability depends upon the prior acquisition of scientific knowledge. So this is what I said, that whatever knowledge that we have, we apply this one to create new technology. So with that, science precedes technology. Science and technology are independent. So scientists and technologists are people who have different goals, using different methods and produce different outcomes. So that is, we call it demarcationist view, because there is demarcation between what science do and what do they produce. And likewise, technology has its own uh, unique characteristics or unique goals and unique outcomes. Okay, so next is technology precedes science. So this is a materialist view, which asserts that technology is historically and ontologically prior to science, that human experience with tools, instruments, and other artifacts is necessary for conceptual development. So the materialist view clearly recognizes that modern science is almost entirely based on interpretations of data generated by instruments made by technologists. So this is now the other way around, or the reverse of science preceding technology, because here technology now precedes science. So the advances in technological knowledge are now uh, the the variable which advances in scientific knowledge depend on. Then we have technology and science engaging in two-way interaction. So this is interactionist views consider science and technologists as a group of people who learn from each other in mutually beneficial ways. So scientific research may assist in the development of technology, but equally technological problems may stimulate fresh scientific research, sometimes in unintended ways. Okay, so this is where we can see uh, um, dynamic flow of information and our dynamic and interaction. Okay, so also McClellan and Dorn in 2006 made this determination related to the relationship of STS. The 20th century witnessed a fateful change in the relationship between science and society. Governments came to believe that theoretical research can produce practical improvements in industry, agriculture, and medicine. Science became so identified with practical benefits that the dependence of technology and science is commonly assumed to be timeless, a timeless relationship, and a single enterprise. Science and technology, research and development, these are assumed to be almost inseparable twins. So this claim of McClellan and Dorn uh, actually hits with this idea that technology and science engage in two-way interaction. So they are never dependent or independent with each other. Okay, so this is from study of Dolo. Based on how students perceive the relationship of science and technology. So we have science and technology being science, technology, and society being at the center. So science and technology has applications in energy, defense, industry, natural events, education, communication, and health. Okay, and so these in particular are the specific applications of science. Okay, so of science and technology. So we have, for example, in the case of industry, we have machines, cars, planes, robots, computer, and buildings. Okay, and these particular applications of science and technology are being enjoyed by the society or by the community. Okay, so now we proceed to the deepening relationship. Okay, so further relationship between science and technology. Okay, so again, um, aside from the fact that there is two-way interaction of science and technology, so there are also other relationships or other cases where we can attest that science, technology, and society are actually related. So changes in society due to scientific and technological progress. So these effects have not been limited to the improvement of society's material wealth, but have also extended to altering the paradigms under which society operates. Okay, so aside from material wealth, because if we are to evaluate countries like Japan, Korea, Singapore, uh, the US, and among others, we actually see that these countries are advanced in terms of their science and technology, and that translates into their uh, into their economic growth. Okay. Also, with scientific and technological progress, it alters the paradigms under which we operate. Okay, so specifically with regards to information and telecommunication technology, before, as I discussed in one of my presentations during the pre-Gutenberg world and during Gutenberg Revolution. So society operates during that time, or communication operates through through books, through words of mouth, and among others. But today, the paradigm as to how we do our communication uh, or disseminating the information are through our gadgets, which contained social media accounts, messaging apps, and among others. So, as progress in science and technology has broadened and enlivened human activity, new issues have appeared in society, and these have in turn led to demands for new sciences and technologies capable of resolving new issues arising from the changes in the society. So that's why the frontiers of science and technology keep on advancing, because if we are to discover a certain, for example, a certain technology, and and uh, and in the long run we see some problems or we want to improve, so by that time we also improve, and that calls for demands. So if there's a demand, well, that calls for changes, or that calls for improvement with regards to science and technology. So much like what we have right now, for example, our cell phones. So we begin with a cell phone as just for communication, for calling, texting, and with games contained in it. Okay, but through time, cell phone or mobile phones turns to be um, a device containing music, a device that can capture photographs and even records videos. And now it turns out to be uh, a computer. It contains Google Chrome, for example, or search engines where we can research. Okay, so but then again, as we see some gaps that we need to improve, time to time, these technologies are advancing. Okay, so you also have okay. So changes in society, we also have achievement of societal prosperity. So since the rise of the Industrial Revolution in the latter part of 18th century, science and technology have shown accelerated progress in energy, physical materials, information and communication, medicine, and many other sectors, resulting in vast improvements in people's health, economic prosperity, and living conveniences. So when we look at the long-term trend in world GDP, from 1500 to 2000. Again, Industrial Revolution happened in the late 18th century, and during this time, up until 2000, so there is a drastic increase of the world gross domestic product. So that means to say that with the advances in science and technology, the world turns richer. Okay, in terms of money. Okay, so we also have um, for a second. This one, um, the long-term trend in world population. So one manifestation also of progress in science and technology is that people have longer lifespan because there are now widely available medicines, drugs in the market, and even which can actually helps which can actually help us live longer lives. Okay, so then for the qualitative changes brought by scientific and technological progress, so we see um, changes in globalization and IT revolution. Okay, so one um, one manifestation of globalization is this one, the trend in world airport volume, meaning to say people are traveling from one place to another. So in 1981 up until 2001, so there is a an increase by at least 1 billion uh, 1 billion passengers each year traveling again from one places to another. It's because planes are now when we travel by planes, it's cheaper. We don't need to consume a lot of money just to ride planes. Okay, so aside from that, we also have trends in world financial trade, services, and foreign direct investment. So these are also increasing. And when you look at the trend in the total number of world internet users, from 1995 to 2002. So there is also an increase of people who are using internet. So when we break down these number of these users, so majority are from Europe, then are some from Asia Pacific and from North America. So one explanation perhaps why there is an imbalance as a distribution of user is that these European countries are actually rich, so with the North American countries. In Asia Pacific, we have so many population. So with that, there will be a lot of internet users. Middle East are rich countries, but the population is too small. And Africa, not all countries there are actually rich. So with that, the number of internet users are actually affected. Okay, so um, the another changes in society due to scientific and technological progress um, leads to global environmental issues. So if we have positive or we have advantages brought by these advancement, well, we also have some negative consequences, such as the wide use of underground resources. Okay, so why this turns out to be a negative consequence or a negative impact of um, scientific and technological revolution is the fact that when we create, for an instance, gadget, so we need to extract resources. Um, and these resources are coming from, these resources come in many forms. So, such as, for example, soil, trees, these are cut down. And so these are forms of extraction, which we don't know actually if how much Earth could sustain our needs and with our existing practices that we're not satisfied with, for example, one gadget. We want to have multiple gadgets. And I think I'm guilty with this one. I have a new cell phone. Then, if I see something that suits my uh, preference, because it has nice camera, it's good for gaming, and so I'll buy that one. And but is that a sustainable practice? Okay, and with that, people are continuously excavating our resources. So, um, um, I hope that not just me, but even you could also improve our practices, which are not sustainable, which are not good for sustainable development. Okay, so another societal issues arising from progress of these are ethical issues and concerns about safety, and also digital divide. Okay, so concerns about ethical issues and about safety. Examples of this one, as I said, we're able to develop warfares, bio warfares, warfares made from chemicals. Because of these advances, because of knowledge explosion, and we are not using this one to our advantage. Rather, we are using this one to during wars and among others. And these are not these are not protecting our safety or our security. Rather, it puts us into it puts us division. It promotes war, and whatever it may. Okay, and also digital divide. Digital divide happens because those who are born lately, of course, they're considered as digital native, and those who were born maybe some maybe before 2000, so specifically like 1960s, 1970s, so these individuals are not so acquainted with the new technology, and with that there is divide, because they cannot cope up with the millennials in particular, as to how they operate computer, as to how operate their mobile phones and any gadgets they have. Okay, so also, it gives threats to societal safety and security. So, as we can see here, we have multiple problems which happened before and even at present. So, outbreak of toxic E. coli bacteria in 1996, the multiple terror attacks in the United States on September 11, 2001. So, again, when they were using planes to bomb that particular building, and so that's product of science and technology, and again it's used instead of promoting safety, it gives havoc instead. So railway bombing terror attack in Spain on March 11, 2004, emerging threats from emerging or re-emerging infectious diseases, and of course pandemic. Okay, so world policy trends related to science and technology. So the previous section discussed how science and technological progress has further deepened the relationship between science, technology, and society. So in this section, we're going to introduce trends around the world in response to the above to the changes. Using as a representative example the global environmental problem of global warming. So um, actually, in some of my discussions, I have already discussed, particularly in climate change, I have discussed part of global warming. But here, what we're interested is how these three interplays, how these science and technology interplay. Okay, so um, the discovery of global warming phenomena and the progress and accumulation of scientific knowledge. So, um, a theory elucidating the mechanism for this warming effect was described by the Swedish physicist Svante Arrhenius near the end of the 19th century. So in 1958, Charles Killing of the U.S. Scripps Institution commenced periodic monitoring of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere at the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii. So the data collected through this monitoring showed conclusively that carbon dioxide concentrations were rising, and scientists everywhere really doubled efforts to research global warming in their own regions. So this is an example of trends in carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere in three stations. We have in Mauna Loa, in Ryori, in Iwate Prefecture, a place in Iwate Prefecture in Japan, and in South Pole. So when we look at the trend of carbon dioxide concentration, it's actually increasing even from 1960 to 2000. And so we are contributors of this one. Okay, so the question now is how does it how are these scientific knowledge contributes to scientific to policy making. So with that, the IPCC was created and in 1988 by the World Meteorological Organization and UNEP. So this IPCC is composed of both scientists and policymakers, which is the first organization to operate at the government level, and was established for the purpose of gathering and assessing the latest scientific, technological, and socioeconomic data regarding climate change and for assisting national governments. So this is what, in a nutshell, how the three interact. So of course, using technology to capture information about global temperature, about green carbon dioxide concentration into the atmosphere, or any other greenhouse gases. So with that, they're able to create an assessment report. So this assessment report represents as scientific knowledge. Again, with the help of with the help of instruments which are considered as technology, and eventually this scientific research, scientific knowledge informs policies regarding the environment. So as you can see, the first assessment report, again, this represents scientific knowledge, informs the the movements, the actions to be taken during Earth Summit. This was in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Okay, so likewise, the second assessment informs the Kyoto Protocol, and uh, and uh, and what's this? And these summit in Buenos Aires leads to the representation of scientific research results in 2000, and eventually, again, we get to have uh, the scientific report turns out to be materials for study of Kyoto Protocol implementation, which rules are presented. Okay, so again, if we are to analyze this diagram, so these what are contained in the report are of course data on greenhouse gases and other parameters, uh, which provides evidences about that there is climate change. So these instruments are technology, and these reports are the knowledge, and this knowledge informs the society. Okay, in particular through policy making. Okay, so this is the diagram about the relationship between science and policy. Okay, so um, new responsibilities for science and technology 21st century. So four concepts as responsibilities for science in the 21st centuries including the already functioning science for knowledge, science for peace, science for development, and science in society and for society. Okay, so let's take a look at this video from UP, of Professor Aliputi Garcia from UP Baguio, explaining to us how science, technology, and society interacts through time.
Hello, everyone. Today I'll be talking about the interaction of science, technology, and society through time. The interaction of the three, science, technology, and society, is actually very complex because it depends on a lot of factors. Of course, there are elements of science, technology, and also more complicated and extreme elements as far as society is concerned. In this context, we will be using science as, for instance, a way of knowing, in addition to traditional ways of seeking knowledge. Science as a structured approach in our search for answers and explanations of nature, physical phenomena, with, of course, the utmost objective of arriving at an understanding. On the other hand, for technology, we will be referring to our ability to control, alter, modify, or tamper with nature in order to suit a certain practical applications that is hopefully beneficial to society. And for society, of course, we are referring to the human society composed of people with certain values, morals, prejudices, problems, and priorities. And at the end of the presentation, you shall see that the society, in addition to being the creator of science and technology, the society is also the end user, and the society also poses the greatest constraint as far as science and technology interaction with society is concerned. Science interaction varies with several factors. It varies with geography and ethnology, characteristic of the society. For instance, the interaction of the three. The interaction of HTS would be different in a society that is, for instance, highly religious. It would be different also for societies that are highly industrialized. It would be different for societies, for instance, in an Amish society, the interaction of science, technology, and society is also glaringly different. It also varies with time because throughout our history, things change, factors change, forces change. So I will be giving 3 case studies in this presentation to sample different time domains, starting from the early days of science, and then followed by the early days of technology and on to the modern times. And also, the interaction of the three varies with the state of global affairs, because the state of global affairs sometimes dictates the priorities of society, and the priorities of society have a very huge impact as far as the appropriation of science and technology is concerned. So for the first case, let's talk about what I call the birth pains. The birth pains refer to the early days of science, which we refer to as Aristotelian philosophy. Admittedly, there was no technology during this time yet. And characteristic of Aristotelian philosophy, if you notice from your readings, is that it's a very simple science. One virtue of a scientific theory is simplicity, as you know. And Aristotelian science is so simple. In fact, Aristotelian chemistry enumerates only 4 elements: that of earth, water, air, and fire. And that's so simple. Maybe that's the reason why, or part of the reasons why it stood for many centuries. And of course, when I am talking about society during these times, the major forces of society in this era is, of course, the church. And of course, another personality named Thomas Aquinas. So we'll talk about the outcomes of the interaction of the three. As you know, and up to this time, there is a constant conflict between science and religion, or science and the church. Well, historically, this conflict goes as early as when Thomas Aquinas made the synthesis regarding Aristotelian philosophy and the teachings of the church as being in consonance with each other. So Aquinas actually laid the foundation of the thinking that when you attack Aristotelian philosophy, you also attack the teachings of the church. So for a very long time, nobody dared question Aristotelian philosophy. Of course, there was no technology yet that can be used to verify or falsify his theories during these times. And so what are the outcomes of this interaction of science and society during this time. The glaring outcome would be actually the stagnated growth of science. It took almost 2,000 years before science can develop, at least in initial baby steps, up to the state that it is now today. So this interaction during these times of Aristotelian philosophy and the great power that is the church would of course echo up to the modern times, and it also laid the foundation of a lot of conflicts throughout the history of science and society. As a second case, let's take the case of the Industrial Revolution, or we refer to it as the first Industrial Revolution, according to science historians, the one that happened in England or in Great Britain. So the science that is at play here includes power generation, the knowledge of generating new sources of power as a revolution or as a change or as a departure from the use of beasts of burden like the horses as the main or the primary source of power. It is also during this time that we were learning how to use new materials, how to understand the properties of these new materials like steel. Also, the English science, as you know, during these times we already have a knowledge of mechanics brought to us by Isaac Newton, and the science of economics, mainly by Adam Smith in his book, Wealth of Nations. The technology involved during the first industrial revolution are machines. Machines that we used in mining, in manufacturing. Manufacturing refers to a replacement of the putting out method, the manual labor-based manufacturing, to a machine-based manufacturing. We also use machines for construction, transportation, particularly in the development of the railway systems, and modern communication. And of course, the society that we are referring to in this particular era would be the English society, its economy, its status as a superpower in the world, and its art and culture. So what are the outcomes of this interaction? But before we talk about the outcomes of interaction, maybe it would be beneficial also for us to understand why the first industrial revolution happened in England. The short story is it happened in England and not anywhere else because of enabling environment. It is a collaboration of fortunate circumstances. As far as power generation is concerned, England is blessed with abundance of coal, because coal would soon replace the animals or the horse as the main source of power. Coal would usher in the technology of the steam engines. So resources and also capital. The English capital is enormous, as you know. You have lots of nobilities in there. Also, the English colonies all over the world, from Africa to Asia to South America. And so in addition to their own natural resources, they can also simply source resources from their colonies from as far as Canada and Australia. And finally, of course, all this science and technology are born out of necessity. The English society had realized that the manual form of production cannot cope up with the demands. So it started with the clothing industry, actually. They have lots of cotton coming from India, but they cannot cope up as far as converting this cotton into usable pieces of clothing. So the outcome of this case study, the first industrial revolution, will also echo until our times today. It put England as the major power militarily, economically, and so on during this time. This interaction also affected not only England's economy, but its art and culture. This is the rise of Romanticism. And of course, this is also the starting point for a problem that would occupy us until today. It's a global concern. This is the problem of pollution. When we started burning fossil fuels during the first industrial revolution, the carbon dioxide level in our atmosphere also began to shoot up. And as a third case study, I will take you to the modern times. The science that is involved here is the science of genetics, our understanding of the genes, the code that dictates everything from seeds up to the adult stages of plants and animals. The technology I will be referring to specifically for genetically modified organisms as food source. And of course, what are the societal concerns as far as GMOs are involved? Well, the two major concerns would be food security and health concerns or health risks. As far as food security is concerned, some experts claim that GMOs is one of the possible answers towards addressing the stability or the security as far as food supply is concerned. Why? Because GMOs are genetically modified plants as food source. I'm not talking about the animals yet, which are pest resistant. Okay? In other words, we can minimize wastage during the growth process, and this results into an increased yield during harvest time. So aside from being resistant to pests, we can also genetically modify plants like what they did in China to be able to grow certain species of rice in salt water or in brackish water. And that's a very important step because particularly in our country, we have limited times as far as rice production is concerned or rice culture is concerned because we are heavily dependent on rains. But we do have a lot of salt water. We are surrounded by salt water. So if we can adopt this technology or if we can replicate this technology, this rice, the breed of rice that survives in salt water, then it would mean a lot as far as food security in our country is concerned. The second societal concern with GMOs would be health risks. Some people are claiming that GMOs are hazardous to your health. That why would I eat a GMO corn, for instance, when even the insects would refuse to eat it, something like that. Of course, these concerns emanate from the lack of science or the lack of understanding of science or the lack of studies that would point towards whether or not GMO food really pose health risks to people. So, and the other concern as far as society is concerned also in these GMOs would be the proprietary ownership of the genetically modified plant. Because farmers are not allowed to plant their own seeds after a particular harvest. They are required to buy a new batch from the owners of the technology. So there is also this concern, and particularly this concern is among our farmers. So what are the outcomes? The outcomes depends on the society. For science-based society, of course, for example, the American society allow the consumption of GMOs with certain requirements according to their laws, such as the full disclosure that a certain food product contains GMOs. Russia doesn't allow GMOs to be part of the food supply for its population. In the Philippines, of course, well, we all know what happened to the BT Talong. It has been discontinued. So as you can see, the response of society to science and to the emerging technology varies not only according to the natural characteristic of that society, its values, its morals, but also it varies with time. Today is the time wherein scientific results can easily be accessed by people through social media. Of course, mostly in laymanized form. So that is both a good news and a bad news because more and more people would be educated as far as scientific results are concerned because the case is we usually are aware only of the technology, but we don't care about the science behind the technology. In other words, we are consumers. We are not producers. We are not producers of technologies. We simply appropriate this technology for our benefits. So, as a summary, I would like to compare the interaction of science, technology, and society to this image here. The image of a man driving an automobile. Depending on the society that you are in, I would like science to be the brain of this driver. So the brain is science, the body of the driver is society, and the automobile is the technology. And this analogy, I believe, is particularly true for the industrialized society, the science-based society. Because in other regions of the world, in other society, the brain is the society. It's the society that dictates which science and which technology to appropriate. It's the society that dictates how we utilize a scientific knowledge for good or for bad. And these decisions, of course, are based on the priorities of the society. As I said at the start of this lecture, the natural characteristic of the society, its geography, its priorities, its problems, its fears, and everything about it will ultimately become the constraints to science and technology. I don't remember the author who said this, but he said that science is a differential equation and religion or society in general is the boundary condition. In other words, science can give us a lot of things, an infinite number of things, good or bad. That's what a differential equation is. It has infinite number of solutions. But to arrive at a particular solution, you need boundary conditions. And these boundary conditions are supplied by society. So in other words, science has to satisfy the needs, the priorities, the fears, and everything of the society in order to yield certain results that are useful also for the society. Thank you.
So that is Professor from UP Baguio talking to us about or fortifying our understanding about interaction of technology of which he presented cases. So for these tasks, for this topic, you have to create a graphic organizer which reflects your understanding about the relationship of science, technology, and society. Just as what I have presented a while ago, the work of one student from a research article which I read. Then, in your graphic organizer, you may use shapes to write concepts and arrows to indicate relationships. So please refrain from copying those graphic organizers available in the internet. You provide a brief description, not exceeding to 150 words. Okay, so these are the sources of my presentation, and that's all for today. Good morning, good day. Thank you.